The People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216,
Freeview Channel 236.
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Dewbs and Co. The budget fallout continues tonight. Now that we've all had a little bit of time to pick over the details, let me ask you this. Lower taxes, do you think we will ever see them again? Or is that just a distant memory? Speaking of taxes, millions more of you will be pulled into A, either paying taxes in the first place, or B, paying 40% tax. What do you make to that? Is that fair or not? And were you one of those that were aghast, quite frankly, at the so-called lockdown files? Well, you weren't like to see the latest goings-on. The official Treasury Twitter account is basically taking a mickey out of the whole thing by making it into some kind of weird marketing tool. What do you think to that? I will have all those details tonight. And net migration, we talk about it often, don't we? But do you know it is now estimated that we are going to reach 250,000 people per year in net migration. Is that sustainable? If so, can you tell me how? Because I haven't got the foggiest on it. And a BBC journalist has quit her role to campaign for Britain to pay more reparations for slavery. Would that be a campaign that you would jump on board with? If so, who gets it, how much, and who decides? We'll have all of that and more, but first of all, let's bring ourselves up to speed with tonight's latest headlines.
Michelle, thanks very much indeed. And the top story on GB News tonight. The government has agreed a pay offer with health unions, representing nurses, ambulance staff and other NHS workers in England. They're going to receive a consolidated pay increase of 5% and an additional lump sum worth at least £1,655 if they back it. Health unions have now suspended all planned strikes and are recommending their members accept the deal in an upcoming ballot. It comes after health workers in Scotland, represented by the GMB union, accepted a 6.5% pay offer from the Scottish Government. The Prime Minister now says today's agreement is a message to other unions to stop the strikes and start talks.
We want to have constructive dialogue with unions. We're serious about finding fair and reasonable agreements on public sector pay. I think today's agreement demonstrates that. And what I'd say to all other unions is, please don't be striking. Please come in and have those talks. We've been wanting to do that. And today's agreement demonstrates we're serious about it. We don't want disruption.
Rishi Sunak, well, speaking to GB News a short time ago, the head of health at Unison, Sarah Gorton, says they want this to be the start of government and unions working together to make a difference.
Well, I think the moral of the story is that when government works with trade unions, we can actually deliver something that might make a difference to the health service. So, we want to see this as the start of a process where government actually listens to trade unions and accepts that we're the voice of health workers and wants to work with us constructively.
Well, separately, junior doctors belonging to the British Medical Association are yet to resolve their pay dispute. However, they've welcomed an invitation to negotiate from the government, with talks set to take place tomorrow. We'll bring you full details on that right here at GB News when we get them. Now, the Institute for Fiscal Studies says the impact of the government's new childcare subsidy on the labour market is highly uncertain. That's after the Chancellor announced children over 9 months in eligible households would be entitled to 30 hours of free childcare a week. The independent group also said scrapping the pension's lifetime allowance was unlikely to play a big part in increasing the workforce, but warned it would be expensive. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, has pledged to reverse the pension plan, saying it'll only help the richest 1%.
The idea that a £1 billion giveaway to the richest 1% was necessary just falls apart the moment it's examined. But it is about priorities. The government has chosen not to prioritise those families that are really struggling. Energy bills, yes, of course, there's some cap on it, but they're still double what they were just a few months ago. And a lot of people are paying £2,000 more on their mortgage because of the mess that the government have made.
Well, as one strike seems resolved today, commuters are facing major disruption on the rail network as members of the RMT union walk out once again in their long-running disputes over pay. 3 and 5 services across the UK have been cancelled today. Further strike action is planned for the 30th of March and the 1st of April. The RMT General Secretary Mick Lynch says the pay offer of a 5% rise for last year and a further 4% this year equates to a real terms pay cut.
All of those pay increases, such as they are, which are amount to pay cuts, have got to be funded by changes to our members' working conditions. So it's a self-funded pay rise, really, and that's very difficult for us because the conditions they're putting on that deal are just not acceptable to our people. So we're stuck in a deadlock, really, where the offer is underfunded, the conditions are not acceptable, and we haven't got a way forward.
Now, the government has imposed a ban on the TikTok app on all government devices with immediate effect. The Cabinet Minister, Oliver Dowden, saying to the Commons it's a precautionary measure following the National Cyber Security Centre's review of the Chinese part-owned company. The United States, Canada and Belgium have already introduced similar measures. MPs are to vote on Rishi Sunak's post-Brexit trade deal for Northern Ireland next week. They're going to be asked to approve a statutory instrument relating to the Stormont Break, as it's known, from the Windsor Framework. That'll be on Wednesday, and it's going to be the first time the Commons has been able to vote on the Prime Minister's new deal, which was agreed with the EU last month. The Pentagon has released new video of the moment a Russian fighter jet nearly collided with a US drone over the Black Sea earlier on this week. If you're watching on TV, you can see the declassified video shows the Russian plane approaching the unmanned Reaper drone and dumping fuel, which damaged a propeller. Russia has denied the accusations that its jets acted recklessly in the incident, which happened on Tuesday. That's all from the GB Newsroom for now. More at the top of the hour. More now from Michelle.
Thanks for that, Polly. Well, I'm Michelle Dewbs, keeping you company right through till 7 o'clock tonight. Alongside me, Kevin Craig is the former Labour councillor and the CEO of PLMR Communications, and Daniel Moylan is a Conservative peer in the House of Lords. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening, Michelle.
And you know the drill, don't you? It's not just about us three here on the show. It's very much about you guys at home. What's on your mind tonight? All the usual ways to reach me. gbviews@gbnews.uk is my email. or you can tweet me at GBNews. Lots of you just getting in touch, listening to those headlines there about the NHS situation, the pay rise. Kevin, good news in your mind?
Really good news. I'm delighted that finally the government did get around the table with the health unions, and everybody, I think, will be really glad, fingers crossed, if we get an agreement.
I mean, the offer, what they've been given is way less than what they were asking for there, so...
Well, it's loads more than what they were being offered. And initially, as we all remember, the government said we're not even talking this year.
Well, your thoughts on that pay offer, Daniel?
Well, I'm glad the strikes are finished, but I must say I'm very worried when you see the head of that union saying there that she wants to be part of running the NHS, and it all should be her and the government getting round the table and deciding how things should run. We tried all that in the past. Get the unions and the CBI and the government and have it all run the economy together and make all the big decisions. Trouble is, they made all the wrong big decisions and got us into a total mess. I think you need to have clear lines of management in the NHS, as you do in other organisations. And the idea of the trade unions are half running the show is a recipe for disaster.
Well, this has been great. This whole thing has been very good for the union membership, hasn't it? Because it was kind of, I won't say it was dying out, but it was certainly in the decline. And all of this has kind of very much bolstered and empowered the unions again, hasn't it? Is that a good thing in your mind? Give me your thoughts. But yesterday, of course, was the budget. Did you follow us to Doncaster? Did you enjoy that programme last night? I very much did. I have to say there was a bit of a mixed reaction from the audience. Hey, by the way, speaking of audiences, if you were watching last time Kevin was on, this has just popped into my head, so forgive me.
You checked, didn't you?
Everyone, this is very rare that I admit this, but I was wrong. You were right, Kevin. I was wrong. The audience, when we were together in Uxbridge, I said they were in support of Boris Johnson. You said they were not. You were wrong. You were right. I was wrong. They were not massively in favour of Boris Johnson. Anyway, I digress. Back to Doncaster. They were split pretty much on the budget last night, but I don't really think that there was anyone truly jumping for joy in that audience and amongst you guys at home. And when it comes to the fallout from the budget, there's been lots of criticism for some of the measures in it. Not least, by the way, when it comes to the tax, Daniel Moylan, because so many people will be pulled. I mean, there's an estimate in 2027, just about the millions of people that will be pulled into paying a tax at 20p, and then again, millions more, about 3 million more, pulled into the 40p rate. There was nothing poorer.
Well, we knew there would be nothing on thresholds because this was all set last year or the year before that these wouldn't change, and that's why nothing new was announced about them. Yeah, this has the fancy name, and what economists give this the fancy name of fiscal drag. Fiscal drag. You get dragged in because of inflation into higher tax bands, and of course, because inflation's so high, even more people than expected are being dragged into this. And of course, it's going to hurt some people, and they're going to realise that there is no free money, and you're going to have to make a contribution. If you want all these things free at point of use, then they're going to have to be paid for out of taxation. And I think it might even help the country confront the fact that, in my view, we're spending too much on public services. We could more than we can afford, and people will see it in their pocket.
So you think it's a good thing?
No, I don't think it's a good thing, but I think it's a clarion call. It's a wake-up call. It's for people to make people... I think it's a bad thing, but it'll make people think, how much is going out of my pocket and what am I getting for it? And I think that's a conversation we need to have in this country.
Kevin?
I'm fascinated to hear that Daniel thinks we spend too much money on public services in this country. Because, unfortunately, I had to work very late last night, Michelle, so I haven't seen the show yet, and I'm going to watch it back in Doncaster. But I imagine most folks around you last night probably don't think we spend too much on public services. I think the budget, the biggest thing for me is I think the priorities were wrong, and the pension focus, when most people will see effectively, less money in their pockets. And I think it's a challenge, let's watch this. I'm going to be very fair to the Chancellor and the Prime Minister. At last we saw, which we haven't seen for a while, some vaguely competent, emotionally intelligent people speaking at the top of the Tory party, with no offence to Daniel's old boss, Boris. But I think the picture they portrayed yesterday, which Hunt did very fluently, is just a long way removed from the lives that lots of folk are living.
Who's this getting in touch? Dan has said, Danny has said, having to pay 40% on your rate of fares. He said, no, you've got that wrong. What it is you don't really start paying. So people are confusing many different things, because what people are saying is they thought it had gone from 40 grand to 60 grand, but you're conflating the pensions. What the 40 grand to the 60 grand was, it was all about the maximum amount of money that you could put into your pension. Previously, 40 a year going up to 60, that's right, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yes.
And now when it comes to the pensions, Kevin just alluded to it then, there's been a lot of criticism, not least as well because one of the measures, Daniel, was basically you can put as much into your pension as you want going forward. Labour have said that they're going to reverse that almost instantly when they come into power. What do you think to that measure?
Well, of course, it was Labour who was calling for this to be done for doctors only a few months ago. The Chancellor's done it for doctors and other people as well, because it isn't just doctors who are giving up working early. Because they run into this very high pension tax if they earn more than a certain amount. So they stop working in their 50s because they've hit the cap. It was always a Gordon Brown cock-up to have this system in the first place, because we actually need we are a country that needs more savings. And we should be encouraging savings. And what's actually been happening is that people who have not been able to put money into their pension have been diverting it into buying up houses and flats that they've been letting out. They're usually bad landlords, competing with first-time buyers and creating the private rental sector. The other thing, if I'm very quick, is the idea that you get a tax break on putting your money into your pension. That's true. But there's no tax on it. Is idiotic, because you pay tax on your pension, on all of it, including your own capital that's being withdrawn, when you take it out. You can have a tax-free lump sum, but on the great majority of it, you are paying tax. So the Treasury gets the money, even if it lets you off at the beginning to encourage the saving, it takes it off you when you draw the pension later in life.
Kevin?
I think the general point I really want to say in response to all of Daniel's comments are the things he's alluding to, they only affect, and this change, a tiny number of people, right? The number of people watching and listening to this show tonight who are going to say, well, you know, we're quids in now, guys, because last year we could only put 40 grand into our private pensions and now it's gone up to 60. It's a tiny fraction of people. And those who could anyway is a very small number of people who will benefit. And what Labour said before, to be very precise to Daniel, was that for doctors leaving the NHS because there was no incentive for the highest paid to keep putting money in, they wanted a different arrangement. That's what Wes Treating said, just like the judiciary have. But the big picture is most people will not be able to take advantage of this, and it's £1 billion going to the wrong priority. And I think that's a very fair critique that we heard.
It's not £1 billion. That's this year. You get most of the money back. It's only because you're looking at 1 year in isolation. You will get most of the money back when people are drawing their pensions. You'll see it flooding back into the Treasury. Leaving aside the lump sum, Kevin, I do know that.
Yeah.
But leaving aside that, you will pay tax at your marginal rate when you take it out, which could be 40 or 45%, depending on your total income.
But I think, Daniel, again, you know, that's a benefit down the line, and it's like
not far down the line, because most people are close to retirement, affected by this.
It's just like the childcare provisions that will come in several years, and the people in the country now are really struggling, and I think they just want to see, they don't need £1 billion benefit going to the best off. I mean...
no, it's not £1 billion going to the best off. You're misrepresenting it, Kevin.
But I'm not.
You are misrepresenting it, and you're looking at it purely in short term, and you haven't addressed this point. We are a country that needs savings. Now, if people are going to save, you're going to look to the country to provide savings for investment in the future, not borrowing it all from abroad, then, of course, the savings are going to come from people who've got money.
Yes, but we're talking, most people are nowhere near the incomes or the affluence.
There are other things in the budget.
That's my point.
There are other things in the budget that affect all parts of society. This is one necessary and valuable measure that you should be praising because it helps lay the foundation for a successful economy.
See how long it lasts.
Why does it matter, Kevin, that there's only a small percentage of people that will be impacted by this? Because what I found quite fascinating on any of these things is if it's just a small percentage of people at the bottom or in the middle, no one cares. But as soon as it becomes a small percentage of people at the top, then you get the critique that you're kind of giving now. Why does it matter how many people will be impacted by the measure?
Right. So your question is, when people at the bottom are affected, no one cares. I didn't understand that, sorry.
What I'm saying is your pushback that people are giving is you're saying, well, there's only a few people at the top.
Yeah.
So you're pushing back on that matter. But actually, there's only a few different people perhaps affected by whatever measure. Why does the quantity of people only seem to come into play when it's the top end?
OK, well, I don't know if I'd agree on how you framed that. My point is, where we are going through, and it's a number of bodies saying publicly today about the amount of time that people's incomes are going to be down, there's cost of living. If any government really wants to try and do their best for the country, put money in the direction of those most in need.
Danny's been in touch again saying, Michelle, this is what Danny's saying, having to pay 40% tax on 37.5 thousand a year is obscene when you can earn millions and only pay 45%. But Christine has almost instantly sent an email, and it just counters this, because what Christine is saying is one of the most worrying things that she thinks of all this is just how few people actually understand the tax system and the pension system. Because, Danny, that's not how it works.
No.
So you have about, I think it's 12, is it 12,500 these
roughly,
days?
That's roughly no tax.
So you pay no tax at all on your first 12 and a bit thousand. Then you pay 20% for a period. What's that cut off?
On the next 37 or so.
Up to 50, and then it's only just over 50,000. Well, let's round it to 50,000. It's 50,000 plus that you then pay the 40% on that bit, and then once you get to, I think it's 150, that's when you pay the 45 to that bit. So, yes, I get it. Some of these things are complicated, and Christine says that actually when you have these kind of budgets and these conversations, especially around pensions and taxes and pensions and stuff, I think so many people do get kind of confused and they just go, I won't pay attention, or I'll forget about that, and I'm not at retirement age. But actually, it would pay for everyone to make sure that they do understand, even if it's just the very basics of the whole pension stuff, because actually you get old before you know it, don't you? Time flies.
Can I say one thing, Michelle?
You may.
To finish, is to Daniel's point about the future now. The £1 billion, which is relevant because that's the sum, you could... 250,000 people could have had £4,000, or 500,000 people £2,000, not those right at the top. You know, that's how it could have been done differently.
So the ones right at the top don't get the money. But the money goes into the pension fund.
Yes, but it's ultimately
It isn't like the Chancellor is standing there saying, here's a big tax rebate you can go and spend.
But you know that
He's saying, here is money that's not being taken from you. It's going into a pension fund, which is going to be presumably invested in the sorts of things that we need built in this country.
But it's the nation's profit and loss, effectively, Daniel.
No, it's not.
It is.
No, you're making that up.
I'm not making
you're
it
confused.
up at all. I'm not confused. I know all this stuff very well. It affects me.
Well, I'll leave you at home to be the judge of that one.
Well,
one
I've never
says
got
he's
near
misunderstanding it, the other one says he isn't.
pension.
I'll leave you to decide which one you agree with. Now, the whole lockdown files, have you been following that? It's been front page news now for weeks, pretty much. And it highlighted what I think, anyway, are quite shocking revelations just about some of the goings-on in government. Look at what the government has actually done there now on its own Twitter account, and I want your thoughts on this. They're basically taking the mickey. They're using this as a selling tool, if you would like, a selling tool to basically promote their budget. And I want you, I'm going to take a break for a couple of minutes, and whilst I'm on that break, I want you to ponder how comfortable you are with this whole kind of leaking of the WhatsApp messages, giving us an insight into government thinking, which was less than great. Is this something that you should now capitalise on to market your wares if you're in the Treasury, or should you just pack it in, zip it, put your head down and hope that it's all forgotten about? Your thoughts, please. I'll see you in 2.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dewbs & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners. On TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, no, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to. by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512,
Virgin Media Channel 604,
Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236,
and YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio
with the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Nana Akue, Saturday and Sunday afternoons on GB News. Expect fiery debate and passionate discussion as me and my panel tackle some of the biggest topics hitting the headlines. It's a place for everyone's opinion. No one gets cancelled, but no one gets an easy ride.
Oh, she's on it today!
Be ready for conversations that are fierce, frank, and of course, fun. Every Saturday and Sunday afternoon from 4 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Hi there, I'm Michelle Dewbs, keeping you company till 7 o'clock tonight. Kevin Craig is a former Labour councillor and the CEO of PLMR Communications, and Daniel Moylan is the Conservative peer in the House of Lords. You guys have been getting in touch about taxes. Jeff says that whole kind of £12,570 it is, if we want to be precise, of personal allowance is not enough. He says you should be able to get more tax-free in this country. Do you agree with that?
I do. And do you know what would be really interesting? I go back to that £1 billion that this pension giveaway to the richest 1%. Why not, 500,000 people lower down,
Yeah, but we all get the personal allowance.
Yes, but increase it.
What to what?
Well, use that money so at least it's going to more people who would make more of it.
Do you agree? Just more tax-free
I'm going to
money?
make myself desperately unpopular. I think it's too high and it should be lower. I think the point about this is that people have to have a stake in the finances of the country.
So what would you reduce it to?
I don't know what I'd reduce it to, but I wouldn't be increasing it because people have to have a stake. People need to be paying some sort of tax. They need to know that what they do that what they call for politically has consequences that everybody has to share in. And I've always been worried about the fact that for administrative reasons and convenience, really, the revenue was pushing this figure. It used to be 4,000 quid. It went up rapidly under the coalition to about 12,500. Really, they made a big show about how it was helping the poor, but it was about how it matched with pensions and so on, and it was more convenient to do it that way for the revenue, collecting it, and there's not a problem with that. But the truth is, everybody in this country now seems to think that their solution to all the problems is something free from the government, and yet the tax base for income tax is getting smaller and smaller. You talk about those 1%, it's, the number of people paying the bulk of income tax is down to quite a small percentage of the workforce. And if that's what you want, that's fine in terms of, if you like, economic equity. But in terms of how you run a country in a way where people make responsible decisions and vote responsibly and choose responsible politicians, it sends all the wrong signals to people. It gives people the idea that there's lots of stuff out there for free. There isn't.
Do you have that vibe at home? Daniel says, everyone has this impression that if there's a problem, the state should provide free stuff in order to fix it. By the way, a lot of that mentality was certainly enhanced during the whole COVID thing, wasn't it? When many people was paid to sit at home. And I know some of you will get in touch and say, not me, Michelle, I had to go do this and that. And I get it. It wasn't everybody, but a great number of people were paid to sit at home and do whatever. Work, pretend to work, I don't know, you tell me. So 12,570 is what you get free. Daniel's saying, actually, you should get less than that to improve your stake. Kevin's saying it should be more. I can kind of see both sides. I think there's an argument for getting some money for free because then you're incentivised to go work. If you're handing big chunks of it over from penny one, then it's not great, is it? So I get what you're saying. When you're saying kind of lower it and lower it, not sure I agree with you because then you disincentivise people to get into the world of work. I probably think it's about right, but that's what we think.
Lower the income tax rate.
What would you lower the income tax rate to?
Well, I think 20% is the starting rate. Even that mad socialist Gordon Brown had a 10% starting rate. So I don't think I'm completely nuts in saying that you should have a lower rate of 10% for people on low earnings. But I think people need to have some sort of stake. Even if they're paying at an earlier point, it could be a lower rate. A 10% lower rate.
But do you honestly think that people feel a sense of connection to the society, a stake in society based on the tax that they pay?
Well, I think what we've had recently, and I think it's really expressive, and I think you're right, there's a COVID point here, is that we've had a very large rise in energy costs, which clearly was attributed to a war that was happening outside our control. It was a real cost increase, at least for a period. I know costs have come down a bit since then. The price of gas has come down on the international markets. There's a real cost. And this affected all sectors of society, included lots of middle-class people. And they were all out there demanding the government should actually do something about this and make this go away. Although it was a reality. It wasn't like sort of just to pretend. It was a reality that the costs were going up. But they wanted the government to make it go away, and the government stepped in and helped it go away, thus creating the sense that that governments can do all these things. But you run out of money eventually. You know, it's $1 billion here, $1 billion there, and suddenly it's all gone.
I mean, look, Daniel, I don't wish to in any way remind you of some difficult truths, but people, the connection they feel to the state is linked to what sort of public services they received. Do they think that society is fair? And under recent times, you know, energy companies, yes, the war in Ukraine was difficult, but energy companies made huge amounts of money. The government had to be forced into a windfall tax. They've seen money wasted throughout the COVID-19 pandemic, and they just want a sense of fairness. And they've seen public services, you know, they are not in good shape. And the idea that we should cut back on public services is incredible, I think, which you said.
Do you feel connected to the state? And what is it that forms that connection? Is it about how much you pay? Is it about how much you take back, how much you receive? I don't feel massively connected to the state, I have to admit. Maybe you're perhaps different.
I don't think I said connected to this. If I did...
Am I making it up?
If I did, what I meant, I think Kevin's making it up. I think what I said was you need to be connected to the decisions that are made in the democratic political process about what you spend money on.
It has to feel relevant.
Because there are real choices that have to be made out there. We cannot have everything paid for by the government whenever something goes slightly wrong.
Well,
people are not stupid.
People are not stupid, says Kevin. I shall end on that note. I'll tell you what I do think was stupid, though. Do you know the so-called lockdown files that were leaked by journalists to the newspapers? It's created quite a scandal. One of my viewers, straight off the bat, though, as soon as I mentioned this in my intro, because, oh, Michelle, move on from lockdowns. Shut up talking about lockdown. Take the hint from your viewers. Anyway, the government seem to have picked up on this whole lockdown file thing, and they're now using it as like a marketing ploy, if you would like, because on their Twitter, the Treasury Twitter account, I played it to you earlier on, I'll get it up now. You don't need to see the tiny words in this thing, by the way, because the messages are kind of irrelevant. It's the principle that I'm interested in. They're basically just taking the mickey and saying, oh, gosh, you know, somebody's leaked this stuff about the budget, and then the science department is getting involved. I think it's pretty disgraceful. You're a marketing man, a comms man, Kevin. What do you think to this ploy?
I think this is really poor taste, Michelle. And I think, you know, it's one of those ideas that was dreamt up in a room full of overpaid people who think they're funny. right? And actually, we're all thinking about the WhatsApp files, is that we remember members of this cabinet having a go at the good people of this country, public servants, berating teachers. It's not funny. What do you think you're doing?
But why would anyone think it is? This is the thing that I don't get. Why would anyone sit? Because I assume that you'll sit there in a little blue sky brainstorm meeting and come up with this strategy. Yeah, I know what we'll do. We'll turn the lockdown files on its head and everyone sit there and go, yeah, high five, and off it goes. Surely someone in these meetings must go, mate, I don't mean to be rude, but I don't think that's a good idea.
Sometimes I think some people might say that some political advisors have been in power too long.
Well, there you go. Have the advisors been in power too long? Just a quick yes or no, just because of time. Do you think that was a bit ill-judged?
Yeah, we've had the Treasury in this form for about 300 years. This is the first time they've made a joke. It's turned out to be a disaster.
Well, there you go. Will they change that? Will they change their mind there? I don't know. Do you? Did it offend you, that whole WhatsApp thing, or not? Or did you think it was quite smart marketing? You tell me. Going to take a quick break. When I come back, I'm going to ask you this question. So ponder it over the next couple of minutes, guys. Should there be a limit on net migration in this country? A cap, if you would like. If so, what should it be at? About 250,000 people a year, apparently, is what the numbers are going to settle at imminently. Is that enough? Is it too much? How do you manage that? Is it sustainable? Your thoughts, please, and I'll see you in 2. I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now? Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. I campaigned in the largest democratic vote in our island story. I know this country has so much to be proud of. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better. The wisdom of the nation is in its people. Vox Populi, Vox Dei. That's why I'm joining the People's Channel. Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewbs. I'm with you till 7 alongside me, Kevin Craig, the former Labour council and the CEO of PLMR Communications, and Daniel Moylan, who is the Tory peer in the House of Lords. What did I just call you then? Daniel Moyley?
Something like that.
Got a ring to it, quite like it.
I know.
I don't think it'll stick though. Right, lots of you guys getting in touch. Laurie says, Michelle, you've just been talking about the personal allowance. You didn't actually point out that you lose the personal allowance once you hit a certain amount of money. You're absolutely right, actually. I didn't point out, but you're absolutely right. And I don't think that's right, by the way, that policy. I don't agree with it, that actually when you do get to a certain point, I think it's about 150 odd when you lose the entire thing.
Between 100 and 125.
Yeah, because it's all quite complicated. Like you get £1, you lose 2 or something like that. But anyway, I don't think that's right, that once you get to a certain point, you're not allowed a penny of tax-free money at all. I'm sure some of you might disagree with that. Lots of you, though, are getting in touch. One of my viewers is saying, what about people on benefits? Should they have to pay tax? If so, how much? I'll let you think about that among yourself. Paul is saying, I don't even want to pay any tax because he's pointing to the £6 million that are going into housing people that are crossing the channel. He says, why should I have to pay tax? And it goes into that. Unfortunately, we don't actually get much of a say, if any at all, as to where our taxes go. Pamela says, I don't want to pay any more tax because it is being wasted on HS2. I asked you to ponder the question over the break about migration. Should there be a cap to it? What would it look like? A couple of you have been in touch saying there should be a cap of absolutely zero. We shouldn't have any migration at all. Some people are saying caps are absolutely useless because they will not be enforced anyway. Keep your thoughts coming in on that. The Office for Budget Responsibility basically says that inward migration is going to settle at about 250,000 people per year. Daniel, what do you think to this this figure, net migration, 250,000? Many people will say it's too high. Many people will say, pack it in, just let anyone come, have an absolute free-for-all. Don't even kind of have border controls in the first place. Where do you sit on it?
Well, I'm going to come at this slightly differently. This is another budget story because this figure has actually come from the Office for Budget Responsibility. And they're the king of the walk now because since they got rid of Liz Truss, their chancellors have to do what they say. And they've got this model, dodgy model, I'd say, a bit like some of the COVID models, in which one of the inputs is immigration. And the more immigration there is, the faster the economy is growing in their model, basically. And that means that the chancellor... they say to the Chancellor, if you agree to more immigration, you can have lower taxes. You don't have to be so stringent because the economy is going to grow and help you out. And so, although they say they're neutral commentators, they actually put pressure on politicians to increase immigration through this dodgy model. And that's where this figure is coming from. It's their prediction. And if they rewrote their report and said immigration is going to be zero, their model would come down, the growth would come down, all the taxes would have to go up higher. So this isn't really a forecast. This is their estimate to make the numbers add up to help the Chancellor work out. Is the figure too high? It's what you really wanted to ask me. Yes, the figure is too high. What we should be focusing on as a country is getting away from this broken economic model of running everything dependent on importing cheap labour. We need to be automating, modernising the economy, learning how to do things in a smarter way. And I agree you can't do everything that way, but that's what we should be doing. That's where the government's focus should be.
Automation and modernisation, when I hear that, I hear job losses. Reduction of job, I hear...
No, what you hear is less need for immigration. There's no shortage of jobs for people who live in this country already. No shortage.
Kevin, thoughts?
Well, I mean, why is Suella Braverman so rated about a number? Like, what does it mean to her? I mean, I know many people are worried about immigration levels because they feel a sense of dissatisfaction and unfairness about uncontrolled illegal immigration, and I think that's rightly a big issue. But the number is kind of random. The first step is get systems in place to control it properly, which the government has failed to do, lamentably, and then also look at why we've got so many people in our own country not working. But a target, I mean, I feel it's somewhere between 100 and 200,000, but it's quite arbitrary, the whole thing, really, targets. I just sometimes think that the Home Secretary, doesn't have a lot else to talk about, but...
This is not what she's talking about. This is the OBR's figure.
No, but
to be fair,
to be fair,
why you're dragging her in?
No, but dragging her
about the OBR.
No, she wants that target.
Yeah, she says it's her ambition.
It is
to have this number below 100,000.
It is,
Suella.
Yeah. And so, Michelle, there's something to say, the OBR, right, Office of Budget Responsibility, sometimes good folk like Daniel, he just said they got rid of Liz Truss. No, they didn't. Liz Truss got rid of Liz Truss.
But the immigration mess, it's not just this government, is it? And it's not just a Tory problem, because you will be very familiar under the Blair era in 2004, I think it was, we've talked about this often, when the EU kind of expanded eastwards, the UK was, I mean, there was hardly any countries actually that did this, but the UK was one of the tiny minority of countries that immediately opened the labour market up to all of, for example, the Polish people, the Polish workforce, etc. All the other countries, or most of the other countries, people like Germany, they put transitional controls in for 7 years. They didn't open their labour market up. So it's not just this government that's kind of a little bit all over the place with numbers and predictions and all the rest of it when it comes to immigration.
No, that's fair. And, you know, I think for the last 20 years under different parties, we've seen a lot of things. I mean, I don't think Germany in particular has got this right at all. I mean, I think that our numbers are still, compared to others, relatively small. But the thing that gets people upset still is the lack of order and control over people coming in illegally, and that is understandably a priority.
That isn't really what we're talking about.
But it is.
No, it isn't actually, because this figure is not about illegal immigration. This figure is not about people arriving in boats.
And I'm saying that
we had legal permitted immigration last year of something in the order of 500,000 people. Now, admittedly, something like half those were students. Or a third of them were students. But that is a very large number, and that's what this figure is about. So these people are coming legally, they are being processed, they are actually, the Home Office is running the system and it is working properly, and they're coming in. This is not about government failure. This is about an economic failure to manage a modern economy.
Final words, Kevin.
Well, I don't know where does a figure of 100,000 come from as a target for the Home Secretary?
Right, there's no target. It's a bit challenging to have a target for you, is it? I'd love to know what Labour's policy on this is. I know it's not fair to ask you because you're only an ex-councillor, but there must be somebody in the Labour Party who knows what their policy is.
Well,
got the chance, they've got the floor here, Kevin.
Well, no, what the floor is, Yvette Cooper was very clear about it last week. I mean, I'll point you towards her tweets about, you know, more officers sort out the administration of illegal
That's illegal immigration.
Yes,
which we all agree.
But we don't.
Needs to be handled.
So on targets, the policy.
On the 500,000 who came last year and the 245,000 that they're saying legally they've built into their model every year for the foreseeable future, whatever it is. On that, is that the right figure for the Labour Party? Or is it just numbers there?
Labour said this week, Johnny Reynolds said it last night, who's a member of the Shadow Cabinet, that it's OK to have a target. He doesn't know what that is at the moment, but managed migration is good, but not figures plucked out of the air. And if people contribute, they're welcome here.
Yeah, I mean, I've got to say, I did already say at this point, but I think when you say about figures plucked out of the air, everyone will be familiar with that. I think it was 5,000 to 13,000 figure that literally was seemingly plucked out of the air back in 2004, and the figure was goodness knows how many fold that, but it was many times more. But what do you reckon to targets? Are they a good thing? Or I think perhaps what Kevin might be alluding to is they're pretty much pointless if there doesn't seem to be much substance behind them. What do you think on it? And anyway, is it something you can even control? Or, you know, we're seeing at the moment in the channel, people just pretty much do what they want anyway, don't they? Right, quick break. When I come back, I want to talk to you about reparations. Is it time for the UK to pay more? If so, to whom? How much? What's the cut-off and who gets to decide? Give me your thoughts and I'll see you in 2.
We are GB News, the People's Channel.
And right across the United Kingdom.
You can find us on Sky Channel 512.
Virgin Media Channel 604. Freesat Channel 216.
Freeview Channel 236.
And YouView Channel 236.
You can also take us with you on DAB Plus Radio.
With the GB News app and at the website gbnews.uk.
We're absolutely everywhere.
Come join us on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess I've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hello, I'm Michelle Dewberry, and you can join me every weekday 6 till 7 on Dewbs and Co.
You're an inspiration to us all.
Clip that bit up.
Well, you are.
That's my ringtone. My political ambitions are, those days are gone, I can tell you. She's only teasing. Go on.
He's probably going to want to lay down now. I'll give him 2 minutes to have one.
Let's respectfully disagree. That's what we like
Absolutely.
on Dewbs and Co. Come and join us. GB News, the People's Channel.
Michelle Dewberry, weekday evenings at 6 o'clock.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by 2 of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me.
So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, Nana, stop arguing. I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different.
Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Hello there, I'm Michelle Dewberry, your company between these two until 7 o'clock tonight. Kevin Craig, the former Labour councillor and the CEO of PLMR Communications, and Daniel Moylan is a Conservative peer in the House of Lords, talking about whether or not there should be targets for net migration in this country. Ronnie says, yes, there should be. It should be in the negatives. You should have negative net migration because, he says, the country is struggling, so it is, he says, with the infrastructure. What would you do with these people then? Deport them off where? What? I don't know. You could be your thoughts. What are you going to do with these people? No idea. But I think lots of you do make a very valid point about that whole infrastructure thing I just touched on, because it's all well and good, isn't it, expanding your population. But if you don't expand your infrastructure, your hospitals, your schools and all the rest of it, then what is the point? Right, a journalist for the BBC is quitting the organisation. She wants to campaign for slavery reparation payments to the Caribbean. Long story short, this lady's family was involved in this, and they've made a payment to some projects in Grenada. And I'm going to cut to the chase on this one. We have lots of conversations about reparations for various different pockets of people, different communities, and for different historical ills. Where do you stand on it all? Does the UK have to pay, or should we be paying any more money in reparations? To whom, and going how far back?
No, I don't think we should be. And it's obviously up to Ms Trevelyan's family what they do with their own money. But I think it's really interesting. She does something with her own money, and then she wants to drag the whole country into doing what she's done. I mean, why?
I think she wants to lead by example, because she would believe, perhaps,
yeah.
that
Well, I don't think
needs...
it's a good example, to be frank, that the country should follow, though, as I say, it's up to her what she does and her family what they do with their money. It's not a good example, because the truth is that until 100 years ago, roughly, the whole world didn't have enough people. And nearly all countries practice some form of slavery or coercion or forced populations. The Aztecs, for example, not only had the populations around them in slavery, they actually ate them as well. So, I mean, you got these things. Are they apologising for that? Lots of Europeans were dragged off into slavery in the Turkish Empire and other Mediterranean empires during the Middle Ages. I'll be asking reparations for that. The whole thing is a complete nightmare if you start going into it. And you should never remember the effort that the British government put in and the British taxpayer put in to ending the slave trade and ending slavery as a status, which we did and we led the world on. And I'm not saying that is, we get unique sort of a prize for that, but it is a point on the other side. And I think that's got to be remembered as well.
Kevin?
I think the key point here is, how would you ensure that the money, any reparations, went to the right people? How could you guarantee that? I think Daniel is the one point I'd agree with is, for this person, it's up to what she and her family want to do. I suspect none of us around this table have got family history that means our ancestors profited from the slave trade. If we did and we'd amassed fortunes of millions, we might want to do something to give back. That's great and good honour. But as a country, a wonderful nation, Britain, yes, we've got parts of our past that were horrific. And the slave trade before we helped abolish it is part of that. King Charles has said he wants to have an open conversation. I think that's really healthy because slavery was so bad. But, you know, I think it's very challenging to ensure that monies would actually go to the right people in the right way. Much more important about what we do with foreign aid spending, I think.
Foreign aid, by the way, when I was in Doncaster yesterday, a couple of people said that they were very disappointed that there were no foreign aid kind of measures, etc., included in the budget yesterday.
Increases, Michelle, or reductions?
Reductions they wanted to see. Yeah, my audience would say, actually. Would you not agree with that, reducing foreign aid?
No, I think it's one of the things that we do to make the world a better place, as long as it's affordable.
So you would keep it at its current levels. Very briefly on foreign aid, what do you think to that? Do you think it should be reduced?
We'd have more money to pay on foreign aid if we hadn't agreed to sign up to pay such large sums to the European Union, which we're still paying, which will be another 8 billion this year, and will continue in smaller sums for several years to come.
And by the way, many people will say as well, why on earth are we paying foreign aid to countries that, for example, have a space programme? Surely if you can...
nuclear bomb.
Yeah, tinker around, sending your bits and pieces up to space, then you can tinker around looking after the poor and the needy in your own country, some might argue. In California, by the way, there's a proposal when it comes to reparations that every black resident should receive £4.2 million, the equivalent of, to make up for decades of harm. How responsible do you feel, by the way, for your ancestors going back goodness knows how many years? Do you feel any set of responsibility at all? I have to say, I don't look back into history and think somehow I am in some way responsible for something and therefore in the current... thing should apologise, but some people do feel that way, don't they?
If your family bank account, Michelle, was stuffed full of money directly traceable back to the transportation of human beings, as was the Trevelyan's, then get your wallet out. But most people, whatever their ethnicity, that doesn't apply to them.
Well, there you go. Would you be happy to pay reparations? To whom? How much? Your thoughts. We could keep that conversation going all night long, but look at the time, everyone. It flies, doesn't it, when you are having fun? Lots of you are divided on that tax one, by the way. Can you imagine if you're just milling along, you don't have to pay your 40% tax, you think it's for someone else and boom, you're in it. Lots of people not appreciating that situation. Daniel, thank you very much for your time, for your insight.
Michelle.
Kevin, the same for you too. I have to say, the whole reparations thing is getting not much support from my inbox. There you go. Have a great night. Nigel Farage, up next.
Hello there, I'm Greg Dewhurst. Welcome to your latest broadcast from the Met Office. Over the next few days, it stays unsettled. We'll see showers, some longer spells of rain in places too, but there will be some sunshine and temperatures above average. Looking at the bigger picture, low pressure dominates the weather pattern as we move through the rest of the week into the weekend. Showers or longer spells of rain, some brisk winds at times too, but perhaps a drier interlude as we move into Sunday. So back to this evening, a lot of cloud across the UK, some showery outbreaks of rain moving north and east, a damp end across southeast England too, and it stays similar as we head into the early hours of Friday morning. Some showers in places, but as a result, a lot of cloud around, temperatures remaining above freezing. So a frost-free start to Friday morning. A lot of cloud around, some showery outbreaks of rain, but there will be a few glimmers of sunshine. As we head through the day, we should see more in the way of blue skies developing, particularly across parts of Wales into the Midlands, northeast England. But this will spark some heavy showers as we move through into the afternoon. But in between, some drier spells and feeling quite warm in the sunshine, highs around 16 degrees. Still a little breezy around some southern and western coasts. Into the evening time on Friday, still some showers pushing north and eastwards, perhaps some longer spells of rain possible across southern counties of England. And then later on, across western parts of Scotland. But overall, again, quite a cloudy night to take us into Saturday morning, meaning temperatures staying well above freezing for all. So another frost-free start to Saturday morning. But it means a lot of cloud around first thing to start the weekend, some showery outbreaks of rain in places, but Similar to Friday, we should start to see the cloud breaking up as we move through the morning into the afternoon. But this again will spark a few heavy showers, perhaps the odd rumble of thunder too. So you might need your brolly if you're out and about.